Hello and welcome back to the TeaTime with Teens podcast. I'm your host Diamond and I thank you for listening in on this episode of TeaTime with Teens. In this episode, we are having our first guest interview of the season with Miss Maylen Blade. I hope that you watch this episode and find some joy or some fun in it. It was definitely super fun to record with Maylen. We had a lot of fun and we even talked and video chatted afterwards. So I hope you guys enjoy it. We're going to be talking a lot about the film industry and just creativity and things in general. So if that interests you, definitely give it a listen. And yeah. Today we're going to be talking to a very creative spirit who's always producing helpful, inspiring content for others. We're going to be chatting with Miss Maylen Blade. Maylen is a content creator and a filmmaker who is also one of the hosts of That's Good Stuff podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about podcasting, filmmaking, and everything in between. So please welcome Miss Maylen Blade to the TeaTime with Teens podcast.
Hello.
How are you?
I am doing wonderful right now. How are you doing?
Pretty good, actually. Awesome. So I always like to start off the episodes with kind of a couple quick questions just so we can get to know you. So since we're talking about podcasting and a bit of filmmaking, my questions are, what's your favorite podcast to listen to currently and your ultimate favorite movie?
Gosh, okay. I'm actually on, my favorite podcast right now is called Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard and Monica Padman. They release episodes every day and they've kind of morphed from, they're both in the entertainment industry, so they interview a lot of celebrities. That's how I got into the podcast, because you get their background, how they came into the business, and if you want to be in the entertainment industry, that's a really good podcast to listen to. But over the years, they've sort of morphed into having multiple shows on their platform. So they have one about conspiracy theories. They have some about, they talk to their fans about the one I just recently listened to was a ghost story episode, which is really, really fun. But they're so entertaining and they're good listens. And yes, so I would definitely recommend that to even anyone who just, wants a laugh. And my favorite film, gosh, that's not even a question because I have so many. I have a whole list over here. The original ones that really got me into movies is the original Star Wars. Those are always classic, but films like Interstellar, or there's even movie posters up here of Endgame and Star Wars. And I guess Little Miss Sunshine, which is a great film with Steve Carell and Paul Dano. And yeah. I would watch that any day of the week, anytime. Honestly, just turn on Netflix and I'll watch anything.
I really love those picks. I haven't watched Little Miss Sunshine or Interstellar yet, but I really do want to see Interstellar because isn't it supposed to be kind of modern sci-fi, but deepish kind of?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those mind trip films. It's by Christopher Nolan, and he also does Inception. And all of his films are like that, where you're just sitting there and you're like, this is crazy. And he's also a filmmaker that likes to, introduce something in the beginning and then totally wrap it around in the end where you're not expecting it, but your mind is still blown. And it's great. And Interstellar is one of those movies. It's about space and kind of time continuum a little bit and black holes. And one of the interesting things they did in that film is there is a black hole scene at the end, and they actually collaborated with NASA and other scientists to create the most realistic version of that black hole they could possibly do. So it's not something just out of the blue. It's something that possibly is real. So yeah,
that's very interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Arrival, but that's one of my favorite films. It kind of does that whole mind trick. It's just amazing, and when you rewatch it and find all the little small details, that's really fun. And then your podcast, the one that you mentioned that you like to listen to, because you do have a podcast as well, that sounds really helpful. I'll probably check into it because I've been looking for some more filmmaking, entertainment, industry-based podcasts. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Definitely a good one.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, you do run a podcast with your friend Aaliyah, is it? Y'all run That's Good Stuff podcast. Mm-hmm. So since y'all are best friends, what kind of came up in your mind where you guys were we want to start a podcast? Were you always interested in podcasting?
So this kind of originated from me, and I was I think it was maybe in quarantine. I have nothing to do. literally nothing. And that's when I started listening to all these podcasts, relatively new platforms still, even with the millions out there. And I was like, it would really be cool to just have something to do, or maybe just like get my voice out there. And so I just kind of created this like little thing in my head. I was like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. And I was like listening to podcasts with, two hosts or one host, and the ones that used to be like the most entertaining are two hosts. Like, I don't really find podcasts with only one host talking to themselves that entertaining, but it could be done. So I reached out to Aaliyah. I was like, hey, we're kind of like the same person. We're super stubborn. We're good friends. We've been friends for a long time. But I wanted a host that I didn't agree with all the time, so we can kind of like argue and make it more interesting. And I feel like that comes out in a lot of the episodes, but in some episodes we're like, oh my gosh, don't go off right now. We have to keep it calm. But yeah, we were just kind of like, oh, let's start a podcast. And it happened really quickly. And my thought process is always like, I need to get something done. I need to do it, and I need to do it to the best of my ability. And it needs to be, I need to monetize this thing. I need to make it the biggest podcast. And so like I bought my microphone, and I bought another microphone, and I started downloading all these softwares to create podcasts and, marketing and stuff. I like taught myself how to, come up with a name, or come up with graphics, and like how to make an Instagram to market the podcast so it reaches more people. And I guess just the origins of the entire thing was like, we just want to talk to people and talk about interesting stuff, and maybe give someone something to listen to. And during quarantine, it was an especially, relevant time to do that, because if you ran out of Netflix shows, what else were you going to do? Like,
Yes,
chores?
totally.
No. Yeah. So yeah, kind of just came out of that.
That's really interesting because I'm like, especially like with teen podcasts, I don't think I see as many with two hosts, but I definitely like hearing two hosts and hearing the different opinions, kind of like a talk show. I really
Yeah.
like that aspect of it. So y'all have had your podcast for about like a year now. You just had like your 1 year anniversary. So what's the biggest thing you've learned from running a podcast in that time?
Um, the biggest thing I've learned from running a podcast is you kind of just got to go with the flow. Like, if you, especially with two hosts, you can't have creative control all the time as one person. As that's like one of my main problems, is like I love to just control everything, because I have this vision. I was like, I need it to be this exact vision, when in reality it doesn't need to be like that. And podcasting is kind of like this liquid, like it's like this liquid place, like where, it's just a free form talk show. Like, the more structured it sounds, the less I like am engaged. That's what I find in myself when I'm listening to podcasts. So like over the season, technically we've only had 13 episodes, and we've taken kind of a hiatus here and there. They're definitely not consistent episodes. But I guess just like hitting record, pressing play, having like maybe an outline of what you want to talk about, so we don't get some ums and awkward silences in there, but just let the conversation flow. And that's what's going to like draw like audiences in. It's going to want to keep them hooked. And people say all the time, oh, the more structured you have, the more evidence you have, the more people are going to find you reliable. And, but at
Yeah.
the same time, I feel like I don't want to listen to someone reading their essay. I want to listen to someone talking their thoughts out loud and in free form. And that's what I enjoy the most. And also like bringing some kind of comedy aspect to it, like throw a few jokes in there, like, make fun of each other in a good way, something like that. I guess, yeah, a lot of people try a little too hard structuring their podcast, like really, really, really structured and like rigid. And I feel like just this, like right now, this conversation is, I guess, the biggest advice I can give someone. Oh, and having good audio. Like,
Yes.
people with crappy audio, I can listen. If the conversation is good, I will listen, but it sometimes can get like annoying. That's yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
learned.
I can totally get that. Not up to par with my quality right now because of my microphone not working, but it's all good. It's all good.
It's all
So,
good.
though like podcasting can seem like really fun to like say you run a podcast and stuff like that, it's also very difficult, especially when you're saying having two hosts, and it can't always be super consistent as if it were like just one host doing everything. So, even though it's super hard, what's like your motivation to continue on with it?
Um, That's an interesting question because I tend to question that myself. But here's the thing. Every time you post an episode or you're recording, it makes you want to do more. Like, you're recording something and the conversation is just so fun, and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, if there were pictures taken of me right now, it looks so dope. Like, my life would look so good. And like, I guess it's just that of not a lot of people are doing this or have the will to do it, because podcasting, starting it, is so much easier than it was like 8 years ago. Like, you literally download something on your computer, hit record, and you can post it and it's out there. But like, just doing it gives me the motivation to do it more. Or like someone coming up to me and saying, I really like that episode. I've only had a few instances where people have DM'd me personally and be like, I listened to this in this episode, or listened to your episode on eating disorders, and it really connected with me. And I was like, I love that, because that is one of the main reasons I want to do it. And when you find a topic for an episode that you're really passionate about, that is also where the motivation comes from. Like, or you're talking with these people that you have close connections with. Like our recent episode, the audio quality is bad. So I literally counteracted my point I said earlier. But I just had 3 of my friends come over, and we just had a conversation about the ups and downs of our senior year of high school. And, we gave advice to our friends who are seniors now. And that episode was so fun because we just told stories. And even though our audience may not get some of those stories, it was still just so fun to sit around a microphone and have this communal experience that we could also share with others. And thinking about that every time really makes me want to do more. And thinking that with each episode I post, more people will listen to it is really motivational.
That's very true. And I'm glad you said that, because it's definitely like really hard, especially like with algorithms and stuff like nowadays. But it's like when you hear like people who actually like your podcast and like what you have to say and can find a lot of value in it, it definitely can be a great motivation.
Yes.
So I listened at least to the first episode when I first discovered it, that you were very interested in filmmaking, which I was super excited about, because I feel like nowadays when you talk to people for like careers and stuff like that, it's not as mentioned as like maybe engineering or, medicine or anything like that. So I thought it was very interesting. So how did you come into being interested in filmmaking and that whole process of like directing, screenwriting and stuff?
Yeah, I think the origin story of this is very muffled because I, as a person growing up, I'm still growing up. I'm only 18, but when you get the question plastered to you, like, oh, what do you think about majoring in, or what are you thinking about for your career when you grow up? It's a very stressful question. And so I was constantly trying to find the answer. And I would change my answer about every 2 or 3 months. Maybe like my longest stint was like 6 months. And they introduced like careers and like life like this to you at a very young age. In elementary school, they're teaching you about doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. And when I went on a binge watch of Grey's Anatomy a few years ago, and I finished it in record time. And then I was like, I'm going to be a surgeon in Seattle specifically, with a house just like Meredith's, and I'm going to find a sexy husband. Like, that's what I wanted to be. And so I even like researched schools. I got an anatomy textbook for Christmas. Like, that was the end goal. And then the closer you get to adulthood and the more you have to like provide an answer to that question, you kind of have to think about what type of person you are. Like, do you like working with people? Do you like school? Do you like working inside or outside? And all the boxes that I checked led to the creative careers, and like careers where you're using different aspects of your creativity. And then this is where the story gets kind of cheesy. I went and saw Endgame, and it was at a time when the theaters were doing reservation seating, and I got separated from my friends because I booked tickets late. So I was sitting by myself in a sea of strangers. My friends were on the other side of the theater. And the whole movie, I was just, I got over the fact that we were separated early. I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to watch this movie. I mean, it's Endgame, so people will crap on me because, like, cinephiles, quote unquote, will say that Marvel isn't real cinema, but it is. Okay. And I was just like, everyone sitting in this packed theater feeling all of these emotions at once. Like, there was this old couple to my left and this young kid to my right and his mom. And when Iron Man died, I looked over and this kid was bawling. And there was tears in the old couple's eyes. And of course, I was crying, because why aren't you crying when that moment happens?
Yeah.
I was like, this is what it's all about. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing in life. I'm going to create something like this that makes people will walk into a theater, or maybe they're home now, and watch my film and will experience these emotions maybe that they haven't felt in a long time or ever. And if they're in a theater, they're feeling it collectively, and there's this community that's created within a film. And like, there's this quote from this filmmaker that says cinema like is supposed to make you forget that you're in a theater. And I think that's what it's really about, because it's all, made up reality that we kind of immerse ourselves in, and we get connected to these people that aren't real, but at the same time it can fill a void in our lives that we didn't know was there. Like, we can get so connected to characters and storylines. It's incredible. And I was like, I don't want to do school for the rest of my life not being a doctor or a lawyer. I like math, but I'm not going to be an engineer. That's my backup plan. Like, I want to go out and produce art and be a filmmaker. And I don't care how long it's going to take me to get there. And some people will be like, oh, that's not stable. Or, you're not going to make a lot of money. And I don't care. The money will come. And if you're doing something that you love every day, they always say you're never working. I really believe that. I'm not going to take a job just because it pays good and maybe go on vacation once every 3 years. Like, that's not the life I'm looking for. I'm looking to go to work and look forward to going to work every day and knowing that I'm going to be creating something, whether I'm directing or screenwriting. Like this, I have a mirror over here that's just full. You can see a little bit of the writing over here, full of screenplays, ideas that, I just haven't formulated yet. But like, collaborating with other people and knowing that if you're on a set, you may be next to someone who's going to do big things someday and really change the world, because cinema has really shaped our beliefs and values in our culture in ways that we don't understand. And I just want to be a part of that, and I kind of just want to make my mark. So yeah.
That's really nice. I can totally relate to that anyway, of like, it's just like so hard in high school when everyone wants to know like what career you want to do and all that kind of stuff. And it's like torn between all these different values and stuff like that, especially if you do lean more towards the creative side. They'll be like, okay, that's unstable, or they don't make a lot of money and stuff like that. And then it's just like all these things like contradicting and being pulled in different ways. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
All right. But like that's very true. And I totally, get that. And like I was saying, parents sometimes when their child leads towards something more creative, it's usually talking about, okay, maybe you can go towards something a bit more stable, like an engineer, like a doctor or something like that. So did your parents or even like your friends, because film or creative things aren't taken as seriously as careers nowadays, I feel, did they have any like reservations about you going um a more creative pathway?
No. I'm glad to say no, because my parents are super supportive with everything that I do, and I'm very thankful that they are. I know a lot of people have family members that, will try to guide them in a specific way that they want them to go, for family reasons or cultural reasons. Earliest, so before I wanted to like be on behind the camera aspect of filmmaking, I periodically wanted to be on screen. I wanted to be an actor. I was like, I'm going to be an actor. And
Same.
I was always nervous to tell them that I wanted to do acting, because I was like, it's kind of embarrassing, because everyone growing up, like anywhere, especially Southern California, though, wants to be an actor. Like
Yes.
I think everyone goes through a little bit of something. And my mom was so supportive. And I think the third time that I like went through this period, she was just like, you know what? Let's just do it. It was quarantine. She's like, let's just do it. You have nothing else going on. Sports are done at the moment. So we went, and literally 2 days later, signed up with this performing arts school in my town. And I went there for a little bit, did acting classes, did voiceover classes. And like, that was just kind of the moment when I realized, like, no matter what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be, like, they were going to support me in that. And I was very, very thankful, because some, people are expected to go the engineering route and the lawyer route, especially like, I don't want to brag or toot my own horn, but like academics at my school, I had a 4.7 GPA, and everyone that was like surrounded by me with that same level of, GPA, I guess, or grades or whatever, were going into, law school or
Yeah.
they're being doctors or biochemical engineers. And like I was doing filmmaking and attending my community college, like, and I was number 7 in my class. Like it was kind of this, oh wow, you're doing that instead of what you're expected to do. And that was the only like backlash, but I didn't feel like they were, or anybody was like saying like, ugh, really, film? Because it's so subjective and it's hard and it's challenging in its own way. And like, because I just find, like, I was like, with doctors and engineers, like there's set rules. Like you follow procedures, you do, equations, and there's always an outcome that you can expect to have. Like you do it right and it's right.
Yeah.
With filmmaking, if you do it right, it could still be horrible. Like
Very
it's
true.
okay. Like there is no set rules and procedures. So in a way, I find it harder. Like you have to use your creativity so much more. And like with doctors and lawyers, you have to use aspects of creativity. But I feel like there's just no set rules, and you're just thrown into this world of filmmaking where it's like, go do something. Hopefully the people like it. Even if it's your $1 million idea, it might flop. And I think yeah, I'm very lucky to be surrounded by very supportive people. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. Like, because it can be very harsh for some people nowadays who want to go into the arts. So I'm very lucky, and you're very lucky too, to have like parents who like support the arts and stuff like that, because that's very much needed. And you mentioned attending community college. So I saw one of your reels recently, and you kind of showed what it's like to be a film student at a community college, which I feel isn't like always the pathway that film students go. They usually want to go to a super prestigious film school or like a 4 year. So would you recommend going to a community college, or what do you think about that?
So obviously my answer is going to be a little bit biased because of my situation. So younger me always expected me, like if younger me saw where I was now, she'd be like, what happened? We were going to a 4 year. What happened?
Yeah.
And I think just I'm very lucky because COC, College of the Canyons, they have a good, we just updated all of our equipment. So now it's turned great film program. And you can attend here for free for 2 years because of Canyon's Promise. So I'm going to college for free for my first 2 years, then transferring into a 4 year to finish with a bachelor's. And I did look into film schools. I looked into USC and UCLA and all these in Syracuse and all these prestigious, universities. The thing was, I kind of discovered I wanted to major in film a little too late. And so you really have to be on top of your game and understand that you want to go into film early because you have to create a portfolio to submit to a lot of these top film schools.
Yeah.
And you can Google if you want to, is film school worth it? And a lot of people would say yes, and a lot of people would say no, because it depends on where you live. Living literally 20 minutes away from Los Angeles, I would say no, because you just go out there and you get a job right away. Doesn't matter. Go be a PA. You don't have to have a bachelor's degree to be a production assistant.
Yeah.
And even if you do, that's where you start anyways. So why not start 2 years or 3 years earlier than when you are in college debt and you have a bachelor's degree from a film school, but you're still a production assistant, because that is the path of being, on a production, is you start at the lowest level and you work the most, but it's kind of just the way it is. And honestly, COC, my community college, has provided me with so many opportunities. Like this weekend, I'm actually going to go to a Q&A panel with Jeb Brody, who is the president of Amblin Productions, Steven Spielberg's production company.
Yeah.
And it's just like things like that, where it's like my teacher says people at the most, known for film schools don't even get this. Like it was a very once in a lifetime opportunity. And it's all about just doing. So like there may be professors at film school that know what they're doing and like have connections. And I think that is the point right there. That is the major pro of going to a film school where you have teachers who are in the industry, because that is your number one, form of connection right there. And obviously you have to be able to bring some talent to the table with what you do. But if you have connections, that is your way in. And you just start building this network and you're in the industry. So honestly, I would say 50-50. Don't pressure yourself to go to film school, because in the end, it's not really going to give you that much of an edge, like to be honest.
Yeah, that's very true, especially when you look at all the videos and stuff. And it's like would I rather get in debt for something when you can, like you said, just go ahead and start at the bottom a bit earlier anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we talked about kind of the acceptance part, what are some of the biggest things you want to work into your podcast and then also your films as you continue to make them, if there are any?
Yeah. So in my podcast, I want to kind of transition the tone and the theme and the overall structure of it to make it more like a 1950s, 60s radio talk show with lots of thematic elements, some, we obviously have our music, our like theme, our theme song. Yeah.
I love your theme song.
Thank you. I made it on a GarageBand. I just spent one night that's another thing I totally forgot. Like I taught myself GarageBand so I can make our own theme song so I wouldn't get copyright.
That's so creative.
Thank you. Yeah, and like making like little other like music tidbits like that to sprinkle throughout the show, or adding a segment where I go out and talk to listeners or just random people on the street, like Billy on the street. Yeah, so and just bringing kind of like a more fun talk showy aspect that people can just like put on in the background, and it's not serious. It's just something that gives people a good laugh. And in my films, I've only really produced and like created one. I've created home movies with my longtime best friend, but we don't put them out in the world to see because they're just ours.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like this big 4th of July production because that's when we get everybody over at my house. We have around like 12 kids, and we've made like a trilogy so far. It's kind of honestly a filmmaking feat because we've spent one day and we have 15 minutes of footage and a whole movie, a beginning, middle, and end. And people are like, you can't do that. But home movie children can. Yep. Yeah. And so in my feature films, I guess I just want to like incorporate, themes from my life because I've had a very seasoned life, honestly, so far in my 18 years, and I can't wait for all my other experiences. But like, it's just like, I wish that I could encapsulate the conversations that I had with my family, especially my grandparents, and just put them in something, and it can just become how I experienced it, because I want people to like laugh as hard as I laugh, or cry with me. And I just wish that I could do that. But yeah. And so like those things, and like style wise, like I haven't found my style yet, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to be like, I'm a posh aspiring filmmaker or filmmaker, and I only watch independent films and go to film festivals, and Marvel isn't cinema, and yada yada yada. Like every movie, like this is a little off topic, but I've come to appreciate movies so much more after like going through the process of making one, just because like even if it's a terrible Netflix movie, like I'm just like, so many people put their hard work and effort into it that I just have to appreciate it. And like I hate when people don't see movies just because one person like is in it, or just because some person did something bad, because you have a crew of like 500 people working on a film, and just because one person who's in the spotlight did something like or like you don't like that person just because like you don't like their acting, like doesn't give you a basis to go not see the film.
I totally get what you say about like kind of like, this sounds wrong, like recording your family members, but like because I've done that because I was like, oh, I'm going to use it for like a script, but I was just doing it like secretly because I low-key think it's like so funny to hear back, and like especially because we don't really have like really voicemails and stuff anymore. Like I know some people like to use like voicemails, keep them so they can remember their family members. I think it's just like the funnest, I know funnest isn't a word, like the most fun thing to do and like listen back to. Like I wish I could make it like a whole reality show or like movie based off it. It would be great.
Have you seen The Goldbergs on ABC?
I don't think so, but I have heard about that show. I'm getting more into sitcoms.
Yeah, it's basically what like we're describing. Like Adam F. Goldberg is a real person. He's the creator of the show, and he like record little VHS home movies. And the first few seasons were based, like after every episode, they have like a little clip of what the episode was based off of his real life. Oh. And the show is amazing. Like it's gone through some changes. Like there's been main characters taken off or replaced, and it's really funny and lovely and so relatable. Like I just find so many aspects of like my family members and their family members.
Yeah.
And I love it so much. And I was like, if I could just record these dinner conversations with my grandparents, or like that would be it'd be comedy gold. And
For
like
real.
I've always wanted to do a dinner table scene, like a super chaotic dinner table scene where like
I love those.
yeah, where there's like someone like preaching politics that nobody's listening to, and like two like siblings fighting over food, and then like another conversation happening across the table, and then like the one
Yeah.
person that's just like sitting there like just not talking at all. Oh, I just want to do one of those so badly. I think it would be
Yeah.
amazing. Oh
They're
my god.
so satisfying. Like chaotic family, especially if it's like a dinner scene, those are like the most satisfying scenes to me because
Mhm.
they're so hilarious.
Yeah.
So
And you
I'll
can find
definitely
something
be looking
relatable
into
in everyone. Yeah.
that. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen Little Women, the 2019, I believe, version, but
Yeah.
like kind of how Greta Gerwig has like the lines overlapping in a way so it sounds supernatural, kind of like a musical almost. I thought that was so interesting.
I love Greta Gerwig as a director. Like if I were to aspire to be anyone, that'd be her, because Lady Bird, Little Women,
Yeah.
like she's coming up with I think her next film's Barbie.
Oh
Like
yeah.
she is incredible. And there's this one TikTok out there of a behind the scenes footage of her directing Lady Bird. And it's this
Oh yeah.
for the garden. And she's just so natural as a director. I'm like, this is what film should be, just people bouncing off each other, like not just the classic Hollywood cut action,
Yeah.
like it needs to be like immersive. And oh, I love her so much. I
Yeah.
love her.
That was so satisfying to watch. She's just directing them and they're just like they have to be really good at improv. That's when you have like top-notch actors that can just
Mhm.
move so effortlessly.
Yeah. And she has like this giddy laugh and she's like, okay, now go right, run left, go,
Yeah.
not tackle each other. And they're having the time of their life. And it turns out to be this beautiful scene. And that's what it should be. I love it.
Yeah. So, since we kind of talked about the themes that you would want to have in your films, you kind of said there's not really a specific genre though that you would probably want to aspire to, or is there?
Drama, I think so.
Drama?
Not in the way that like it's like slow talking and it's like families in the South having family
Yeah.
problems. Like I don't, not like that. But I mean, I wouldn't want to direct an action comedy because I feel like, or maybe I would direct an action movie and then bring some depth to it, because I feel like with action movies they
Yeah.
get crapped on a lot because it's all explosions and stuff, and there's not a lot of like deep character arcs. It's a lot of flat characters.
Yeah.
But you know, we could be the first to create an action movie with characters that are round and they have this deep, complex story and history. I mean, there's films like that
Yeah.
out there, like the James Bond movies, but a lot of times action. I would love to be an actor in an action movie. Like to do those stunts would be incredible.
I know, right? Just seeing them practice those stunts gives me so much motivation to like work out and go after stuff.
Yes, I'm like, what is their workout routine? I need.
Exactly. I don't know about the eating regimen though, because I'm like,
No.
no.
No, hell no. Like not apple a day. No, thank
Yeah.
you. But yeah, or like I enjoy comedy so much that I don't want to watch myself botch one. Like
Yeah, I can
comedic
understand that.
timing, comedic timing is so important in those movies that maybe I could do it in the future, but right now I'm like sticking to my guts. More of what of what my ideas for it right now is definitely coming of age, and that fits in the drama category
Yeah.
and like indie. But I'll and like adding like I don't even know what even other genres are those? Action, comedy,
Adventure, but that's like sci-fi,
yeah.
dystopian, I guess.
That would be good because with sci-fi you can bring in so many elements of CGI to create something so visually appealing if it's done right that
Yeah.
it can be really inspiring. So, but yeah, I would honestly dip my foot in everything. Like I'm not going to be pretentious and be like I don't ever do comedy. Comedy is below me. Like no.
Yeah.
I'll try.
So you're also kind of into like the screenwriting aspect of directing and filmmaking, correct? Yeah, so definitely like with action and stuff like that. Have you written like an action sort of screenplay or thought about it?
No. Flat answer. No. I haven't thought about it at all. Just because I think the stories that I want to tell, like the camera angles, the shot types I want to use, it's more of like not anywhere near the action category, because when I'm thinking of ideas in writing, like I'm simultaneously thinking about the shots and the angles and the frames that I want to capture and the lights and the tones. And a lot of what comes to mind is just not action yet. You know, I could come up with a good action movie idea, but then again, like if I screenwrite it and I collab with people, it's a lot of times what I found out in like learning all about this is like big entertainment figures will do screenwriting and will direct their own films, like Paul Thomas Anderson will, or Wes Anderson. A lot of the times you for a screenwriter, you write and then you sell your stuff to people that can take it in whatever direction they want to. And so you may have this specific vision for like a set or an action sequence, and you can put it as best as you can in a screenplay. There is no telling whether it's going to come out like that in the film. So I guess that's kind of where I draw the line with screenwriting. If I'm going to screenwrite, I'm going to make it. It's going to be mine. And then I also have this pull where I'm like, oh, I'm going to act in it too, but that's just maybe not possible. But yeah, action hasn't come to mind yet. But, you know, the future, you know, who knows what the future holds?
Yeah, that's why I kind of asked you about that, because you said you like action films that have like more in-depth characters. Like I think of Avengers and stuff like that. I love films like that where it's kind of like, yeah, you're a superhero, but that's not like the whole person. It's much deeper than that. And like I've tried to dabble into writing some action, like sci-fi stuff, mostly to deepen the characters, but also have that aspect of it. And it's so hard to like describe certain things. Like you don't think about it, how much detail goes into the location, about specific, you know, traits of a character and stuff like that. Like it's definitely a lot of work. And like you said, a lot of detail goes into filmmaking in general that we don't even think about, like angles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all that goes into production. And it can be horrible, the final product, but I have so much respect for people who are able to do it. It may not be best quality, but it's a lot of work that people really don't realize nowadays.
Yeah. My film teacher was like, getting a movie done, horrible or not, is a miracle.
Yeah.
Getting a good movie done is like just a dream. And making a great movie is impossible. Like that's what he said. And I was like shocked, because I was like, what? I can make a good movie. I can make a good one. Just give me equipment and time and people. But I mean, he's right. Like the amount of effort we've put, my group and I at my class have just put into making like 3-minute things that turn out mediocre is insane.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But like just mentioning kind of like the aspects of Hollywood and then indie filmmaking, do you see yourself going more of an indie route or Hollywood route, or does it matter? Would you do like both?
I would definitely do both. And I say that because a lot of people think like, oh, you want to be a big time director, you got to go directly into Hollywood. But a lot of the times, like, I can't name them at the moment, but I know that there are big names in Hollywood, big directors that do indie stuff in their not free time, but when, you know, they're not contracted to do a movie, like with the big studio, like Warner Brothers or Universal.
Yeah.
And so, and if doing an indie production is the only way that you can get something that you want done with people that also want to do that, and a big studio won't greenlight that specific screenplay, then you go the indie route. And a lot of times the indie route, quote unquote, is more artsy because it's independent. And I guess it gets that because the studios, when they greenlight a movie, they look for business. They look as, where is the money going to come from? Are we headlining this film with a big name? Are we, you know, is this going to be something that's going to create a culture like Star Wars or like in Lord of the Rings? And if it doesn't really do any of that, or if they just really, really don't like it, they're going to say no. And then if you get to an indie production or you're able to fund it yourself, that's when it becomes an independent production. People will love it either way. And then it'll get screened at film festivals. And honestly, a lot of people don't realize like how many people have come from the independent industry into the big studio industry. Like the way a lot of the films get to theaters, if it's not from a big studio, is getting their short film screened at film festivals like the Cannes Film Festival or the Venice Film Festival. And then they get picked up and greenlit for a big studio production, and that's how they get filmed. Like Wes Anderson, his first film was called Bottle Rocket, and it was a tiny short film with the Wilson brothers. And it got picked up and bought out, and that was his first studio movie. It basically just expanded that short film. And so I would honestly whatever comes my way, I'm taking. Like, that is the mentality you have to have. Like, do not have stigma around any industry. Like, just take it and roll with it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. Like a lot of like big blockbuster movies that are coming from directors, they started off with like indie filmmaking. Like even Lady Bird and stuff like that was like originally indie. Ryan Coogler, who's about to direct Black Panther 2 and directed Black Panther, create all that stuff, came from an indie film set and that got picked up. And, that's basically kind of a more popular, right? But I do agree that people do try to be a bit more artsy when they're like, I'm indie. And like, so I do all this stuff myself. I mean, like, I get it, but I mean, if you can get to a place where a studio can produce and you can still have a decent amount of control, like that's very, very admirable, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The only thing to be wary about is when you greenlight your movie, there can be some executives that are like, yeah, we can't do that. You have to change that. Like, especially like that's honestly like real talk here. That's what happened with Disney and Star Wars. Like Star Wars, Disney accrued Star Wars and then just went totally downhill. Like, Kathleen Kennedy and like all the execs up there had to make creative decisions that were going to be good for business and people pleasing rather than like sticking with what hardcore Star Wars fans would like. Yeah. And then it's all like give or take because you're not going to please everyone. But at the same time, when you're like putting the liability of the creativity of the story at stake for like business, I mean, it's in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's like that's like the bare bones of filmmaking is there's the business side and then the creative side. And as much as we want the creative side to film to continue to thrive, like with streaming now and everything, like for platforms like Netflix to be able to bring in more people or to keep people, they got to produce original movies, right? And a lot of those original movies, hate to say, are crap. It's like Netflix has this like room of editors and they're all clean cut. It's like every Netflix movie is sterile. Like I don't like it. They all have the same lighting, angles, like everything. It's bad. And you can tell when it's a Netflix movie. There's no like gritty film grain like that makes it real. It's all digital. Except I did like Do Revenge. I did like that new movie with Maya Hawke and Camila Mendes. I did.
Oh yeah.
And that was a Netflix movie. But it's really changing. Like the whole industry is changing. Like you hear stories about how films were made in the 50s and the 60s. With big studios would contract out in the 40s too, actors, and you would have to fill a quota of movies. So you would hear about actors that be in 70 movies before they're allowed to, do anything else. It's insane. But it's really morphed, and it's morphing for the better because with the upside to platforms like Netflix and Hulu and all these streaming platforms is you can get and YouTube, you can get your film, like you can make it yourself and you can get it when it's already made and put it on those platforms. And you don't have to pay for it to go in a theater. And it's just super accessible to anybody now. And that's honestly what I love about this new era. So
yeah. Definitely YouTube is like a pretty good one for filmmakers nowadays and like smaller production companies like posting things. I like to watch those in my free times, like short films, because there's just so much work into them.
Yeah.
But like, I definitely agree because there's definitely that different business part that a lot of people don't think about. But, it can seem like super harsh because like you're not getting the content maybe that you want. But it makes sense in a business way because it's like you don't want to lose money. You see a lot of blockbusters nowadays losing so much money, but then again it's like it has to be a pretty even balance of like what the fans want because that's going to make the most money if they come. So it's like a weird balance nowadays, like especially Star Wars, Disney, Marvel, it's definitely changing, but hopefully we'll get to that peak point like with some new movies this year. It'll be pretty good.
Hopefully Marvel will turn it around. I'm so excited for the new Black Panther movie. I just rewatched the trailer today.
I was so nervous about the new Black Panther that I didn't watch the trailer until like legit last week. And now I'm like so excited for it, but I was just so scared with what Marvel's been doing lately. No offense, but I mean, it's just not my cup of tea like that. But I am excited for Black Panther. I have faith in like Ryan Coogler.
Yeah, like the She-Hulk series, I stopped watching it. I couldn't. And then I saw memes of like Megan Thee Stallion in the show and I thought it was CGI faked in there. I was in shock.
I started She-Hulk. It's the first episode, okay, wasn't horrible. I felt like the people were a bit harsh on it. I was like, okay, I mean, it's not the best, but it's not terrible. And then when it got to like the third or fourth episode, I was like, I can't do it. And then I saw that end credit scene with Megan Thee Stallion. I was like, why are we bringing some pop culture references into the Marvel universe? Like,
I
I feel like
know.
it just, I don't know, it's just like that realm of like intimacy with the films and that connection, this whole universe. Now it feels like the real world, and I'm like, I don't
Right.
like that.
Right. It takes you out of that suspension of belief, and that's not what it's
Yeah,
supposed to do. Like Megan Thee Stallion exists in my world, not yours. I want to be transported into your world. Um, but yeah, but okay, No Way Home was good. That was
yeah.
2020, 2019.
Hmm.
When was that? 2021.
Yeah, mine
2020.
was 2021. Yeah, that was
I'm
last
like
year.
thinking about
Okay.
it. I was like, oh yeah, wait, I'm so off. No, yeah, 2021. And then uh and then I was like, oh my gosh, we got Doctor Strange. No.
I could I couldn't watch Doctor Strange. I was like, I'm not messing with that. Mm-mm.
But I honestly, speaking of the Black Panther trailer and the Quantumania trailer that just dropped, like I wish sometimes the trailers to movies are so much better than the movie. Like
For
the
real.
music that they use, the way they make it so epic and cinematic, like the way that
Yeah.
they use Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road in the Quantumania trailer gave me
Yeah.
chills the whole time. I was like, I wish I would be a trailer maker if that came
I
across my
know. I
path.
love trailers. I love trailer music. It's like the most motivating thing to me. And then
Yes.
I'm like so scared nowadays because they'll have these good trailers. And I'm like, even though Black Panther's trailer was so good, there's still a bit of doubt. Like, I
We'll
don't know what
never.
we're gonna get. And even
Yeah.
with like Thor: Love and Thunder, I didn't really watch those trailers, but I did push myself to watch it. It was okay. I mean, it was all right, but it wasn't as good as Ragnarok,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And
Yeah.
I mean, the director of that film, I think he's like a pretty good director, but
Yeah. He's Taika Waititi, he did Ragnarok. And so everyone expected to be Thor Love and Thunder coming right off of No Way Home and Doctor Strange. Like we expected No Way Home was good. Doctor Strange was terrible in some people's opinions. In mine, it was bad. And then we're
yeah,
like, okay, at least we got Thor Love and Thunder. We're gonna rebound. It didn't do as well. I thought it was like not a Marvel movie. Like I thought it was like entertaining. I laughed, but it was
yeah.
a Marvel movie, and you had one of the best villains in the Marvel universe besides Kang. Like, or how do you say his name? Kong or Kang? I don't know.
I
It's
think
the new
it's
guy.
I'm not sure to be honest. I think it's King, or maybe it does. I don't know.
But like I don't know, that movie just didn't hit. But he's
Yeah.
also coming, Taika Waititi, the director, he's coming over to the Star Wars universe and doing
Oh,
some stuff. So that is scary, but good because he's a good director. That film just
yeah,
didn't land with a lot of people. And I don't, who knows though. It's all perspective and some people just don't like stuff.
yeah. We could technically like go on for hours talking about this, but
Literally.
we do have to wrap it up. So, is there anything we can see you doing next? Any upcoming episodes for podcasts or short films or anything?
For my podcast, I'm trying to get together a episode on junior high dating. So
Ooh.
I went to my sister's junior high and interviewed a ton of people about what dating is to them and what their ideal date looks like. And it was so cute. Their answers were
Aw.
so innocent. So I'm just like have a giant montage collection of those voice memos I'm gonna put in the episode and maybe bring my sister on and talk about that. And for films in the future, um, within the next year, hopefully, I'll be able to write out this jumbo mumbo of ideas on my mirror into a screenplay and get it directed and produced to my liking and maybe out within the next year. I've been sitting on it for literally 2 years, so I need to do something with it. But yeah, I mean, I'm just constantly putting stuff out there. Or if you follow my Instagram or my podcast Instagram, you'll see reels and stuff that I'll be putting out. But yeah,
That sounds super exciting, especially for the podcast, because I am going to do an episode on like dating, but like high school, because I'm like
yeah.
I'm a very late bloomer. So I feel like that would be so interesting to hear, especially from middle school, because middle school was, especially with dating, that was like the whole entrance of it all. So that will definitely be exciting. And I do
Yeah,
get with like sitting on scripts and stuff like that, because it's so hard. You'll have these ideas in your head, but then putting them down on paper and then actually filming them and all that stuff can be a huge feat. So we'll be looking out for it, but it'll be super
awesome.
fun to see.
Thank you.
But
Yes, I'm excited to make it, honestly.
yeah, that would be super exciting. But thank you for coming, and we're going to wrap up this episode. And I'll have all of your websites and links and your Instagram and the show notes. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
If you made it to the end of this episode, thank you so much. Remember to follow Maylen. I'll have all of her sites and her podcast down below. She has the That's Good Stuff podcast, so definitely follow and check that out, and her page as well. So like I said, we're going to get into the weekly Bible verse, and for this week I have chosen to read out of 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 10, which says, God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. So when I was looking at this verse, I was looking at something that pertained to gifts that we have and felt that we have been given. So that's basically what this verse is saying, that there's a lot of different gifts out there that God has presented to his people, and we each have one or more, and so it's really trying to figure out, well, what is my gift and how can I use that to better the kingdom for the Lord and to help people around me. So it could be through film, it could be through art, it could be through engineering, through law, it could be through any of that kind of stuff. So I thought that was just something great that we could really reflect on this week. And yeah, without further ado, I thank you for listening into this episode. Have a great day and a great week. Stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.